Pixar pioneered the art form of animation. It's not its own genre. Animation is merely a way of telling an amazing story, and that's just what Pixar did with their very first movie. I'm sure you know which movie it is. Toy Story was the first Pixar movie I'd ever watched and is one of my most fond memories from childhood. We'll be going through a short recap first, then move into a closer look of the movie. Toy Story stars Captain Gump and Tim the Toolman Lightyear as the leaders Woody and Buzz, respectively. The movie also stars Don Rickles as Potato Head, Jim Varney as Slinky, Wallace Shawn as Rex, John Ratzenberger as Pixar Man Part 1, and Annie Potts as Bo Peep. The movie follows Woody and Buzz after Woody tries to murder Buzz because he's jealous of the attention that Buzz has been getting from Andy, their owner. Buzz, however, doesn't think he's a toy and constantly tries to repair his space box so he can get back to Star Command. After the attempted murder, Andy takes Woody to Pizza Planet instead of Buzz, since Buzz was pushed out of the window. But wait, Buzz is still alive and proceeds to kick Woody's ass for trying to kill him. After getting to Pizza Planet, after Woody fucking dies again, they try to get back to Andy. However, Buzz gets distracted by a cult in the spaceship. They're then chosen by the cult's god, the Claw, to be kidnapped by the Skull Kid, otherwise known as Sid, and taken to his torture dungeon. Here, Buzz finally figures out that he's a toy and falls into a deep depression after jumping off the stairs and losing his arm. The quote-unquote cannibal toys in Skull Kid's torture dungeon put Buzz back together, and they hatch a plan to traumatize this same child. After traumatizing Sid, they begin a chase to get back to the moving truck so they can finally be together with Andy and the other toys once again. After nearly dying to a rocket, Buzz and Woody manage to fall in style into Woody's hands in the car once again. The film closes with Andy getting a dog, thus calling into question how long these toys will last with this slobber monster. Toy Story was a feat like no other. It was the first computer animated film to grace the world, and it wasn't a complete failure. The animation by today's standards is a little rough. However, I can honestly say it still holds the same magic nearly 25 years later. It's an expertly crafted vision told from the brightest minds in animation at the time. The original crew behind Toy Story had come together at a time when there was no reference point, and even Disney, the studio who approached them to make the film, even wanted to place their hands firmly on the creative process and change it to what they wanted it to be. They being Ratzenberger, who eventually went to throw a fit about other things and create the opposing studio DreamWorks, and produce their own breakout hit, Shrek. Besides the point though, what Pixar did with this story was special and set the groundwork for what a great computer animation would be like in the future. Speaking of animation, let's talk about that. The animation is, well, it's kind of scary. Humans look more like toys than toys did, and the dog is, well, it looks like a Plastic Nightmare Fuel version of the Target dog. But this is kind of where Pixar's brilliance comes to play at first. You see, they knew their limitations as a studio at the time and knew how plasticky the character models had looked, which plays into why it's Toy Story and not Animal Story or some obscure fairy tale. The animations for the toys isn't even that bad really, because the toys already move in unnatural ways in real life. The only thing about the toys in animation that doesn't really hold up is the lighting. It's obviously their first go around and it reflects that, but it's forgivable. Also, the way Woody runs is pretty scary too. Now onto the story. As you might have guessed, it's about toys. The short of it, it's amazing. As some might know, Jeffrey Katzenberg originally suggested Pixar to change the story to make it more adult. After testing that more adult version with an asshole version of Woody, and having it completely be hated by Disney execs and any test audience, Pixar had about 2 weeks to come back with a good story. What they came back with was an amazing taste of what Pixar was capable of and would continue to do with for the next quarter century. A wholesome buddy movie shared between two outstanding leads that made you both love and hate Woody and his stubbornness to please, and Buzz's general ignorance to the situations in front of him. The movie has two outstanding arcs that leave the main characters grown as a person and as a better toy than ever could have been before. This story really lays the ground for future films by Pixar as a studio. The story teaches us that our friends can come from anywhere and that we should be accepting of people and things that are different from us. A story often told in Pixar as we see this buddy style in basically every Pixar movie they have ever made. However, the story can be told just as such through music as we see with the story. At the time, Toy Story was a large departure for Disney. It came out in 1995, right in the middle of the Renaissance, where the biggest movies were The Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, and The Little Mermaid. Those movies all have something in common too. They're musicals. Musicals are defined as productions where the music also drives forward the story in scene rather than on an overlay over what the action is happening in. Think of songs such as Part of Your World, Hakuna Matata, and Something More. These songs all serve as turning points in their respective stories. We learn character motivations, things that make these people who they are, and even further their story in the context of it. Toy Story has this, but it's not in the same way. It's obviously not a musical, but it has memorable music. You've Got a Friend in Me is one of the most memorable songs in any recent soundtracks. Randy Newman's voice is so the perfect punctuation of the music and wraps everything into a nice little bow. You've Got a Friend in Me also adds to the story. The song at the beginning of the movie is used to highlight Woody's friendship with Andy. In that opening, we get an example of Woody's motivations and what him and Andy mean to each other. And by the end, the meaning of the song shifts. The second time the song plays, it's to provide the other half of the bookend for the movie. When Woody and Buzz are sitting on the bed with all the other toys as friends, it shows how both characters have grown. Woody leaves behind his murderous past and Buzz accepts his reality as a toy. They grew, and we hear that in the music. It doesn't have to be sung by Woody on a rock in the ocean for us to understand that. So what do I think? Where does this movie land? Well, since it's the first Pixar film, it obviously takes number 1 at the moment. Realistically though, it doesn't break my top 3. While it is a good entry in Pixar's catalog, it's markedly the first entry in it. It hasn't ironed out the formula just yet, and it just feels like a freshman flick. And the animation does show through with that. At the time it was the top of the chain, but now I'd place it somewhere in the middle. The story, while not being anywhere near shallow, it's not as complex and nuanced as later films would turn out to be. As present though, I'd give the movie about a 7 out of 10. While being an amazing first film, it has some cons that I can't look past. It's great, just not my favorite. The next movie though, it's kind of been bugging me.